A racist airline staff member downgrades a black passenger, realizes too late she's the CEO of the company. Imani Jones stood in the bustling airport terminal, her heart racing as she navigated through the throngs of travelers. The energy was palpable, a blend of excitement and anxiety that filled the air like static electricity. As the CEO of a major tech corporation, Imani was accustomed to high-stakes environments, but today was different. She was traveling incognito, hoping to avoid the attention that often accompanied her title. Clad in a simple black hoodie and jeans, she blended in with the crowd, her long hair tied back in a low bun. As she approached the Skybound Airways counter, Imani noticed the gleaming logo of the airline, a symbol of modernity and customer service. She had chosen Skybound for their reputation for inclusivity and excellence. Little did she know that behind this polished exterior lay a world of prejudice. "Next," barked Brenda Clark, the gate agent, her eyes flicking up from the computer screen as Imani approached. Brenda was in her early 50s, with a tightly pulled bun and a sharp gaze that seemed to assess Imani's worth at a glance. "Hello, I'm Imani Jones. I have a first-class ticket to San Francisco," Imani replied, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her stomach. Brenda's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before it hardened. "Let me see your ID and ticket," she demanded, her tone lacking any semblance of warmth. Imani handed over her identification, but she could feel Brenda's scrutiny, a cool assessment that felt more like a judgment than a simple verification. "Thank you," Brenda said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "I'll just check if your seat is still available." As Brenda typed away on her keyboard, Imani glanced around the terminal, noting the vibrant mix of passengers. Families, business people, and young travelers filled the waiting area, all eager for their journeys. She turned back to find Brenda's face twisted into a scowl, her fingers slamming the keyboard as if it had personally offended her. "Uh-oh," Brenda said, her tone mocking. "Looks like you've been downgraded. The flight is overbooked." Imani's heart sank. "What do you mean downgraded? I have a first-class ticket." "Doesn't matter," Brenda replied dismissively, waving a hand as if to brush Imani off. "You're now in economy. It's either that or you don't fly." Imani felt a rush of heat flood her cheeks, indignation rising. "This can't be right. I deserve to be in my assigned seat." Brenda leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a smug expression. "You can get a refund if you'd prefer, but I'm not putting you back in first class." The subtle implication in Brenda's tone made Imani's stomach churn. "Is there a reason for this?" Imani asked, keeping her voice calm, though her irritation bubbled beneath the surface. Brenda's lips curled into a condescending smile. "Just company policy, you know. First class is for the important passengers, and, well, you don't exactly fit the profile." Imani's mind raced as she processed Brenda's insinuation. The underlying racism was all too clear. Imani had encountered discrimination before, but being downgraded solely based on her appearance was a new low. "I'm sorry, but I think you're making a mistake," Imani said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm the CEO of Jones Technologies. I deserve the respect that comes with my position." Brenda's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise crossing her features before she recovered. "Well, if you're really that important, you should have made sure you got here on time. No one is entitled to anything on my watch. Now, do you want to fly or not?" Imani felt a wave of frustration wash over her. She could reveal her identity, but she didn't want to be that person, the one who used her power to intimidate others. Instead, she decided to observe Brenda's behavior further. "Fine," she said, biting back her anger. "I'll take the economy seat." "Good choice," Brenda replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm as she handed Imani a new boarding pass. "Have a nice flight." As Imani walked away from the counter, she could feel the eyes of nearby passengers on her, some sympathetic, others judgmental. She couldn't shake the feeling that Brenda's actions were not an isolated incident. There had to be more to this story, and she intended to find out. Once she boarded the plane, Imani settled into her economy seat, her mind racing. She glanced around the cabin, observing the other passengers as they stowed their luggage and chatted with one another. She couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between how Brenda treated her and how she interacted with the other first-class passengers. The flight attendant, a young woman with bright red hair, greeted each first-class passenger with a warm smile and attentive service. In stark contrast, Brenda's demeanor had been cold and dismissive, especially towards Imani. Did Brenda treat all people of color this way? Imani decided she needed to document what she observed, not just for herself, but for anyone else who might have faced similar treatment. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Imani pulled out her phone, discreetly recording Brenda's interactions with the passengers, particularly anyone who seemed to be treated with less respect than their ticket warranted. The flight attendant continued to serve drinks and snacks with a smile, while Brenda scowled at the economy passengers, barking orders and failing to offer any semblance of courtesy. Imani's anger simmered as she watched the dynamic unfold. She had been subjected to microaggressions throughout her career, but this was blatant and unacceptable. She felt a sense of responsibility. If she could gather evidence of Brenda's discriminatory behavior, it could help others who might not have the same platform to fight back. As the flight continued, Imani kept her phone recording, shifting her focus between Brenda and the passengers. She noticed Brenda's interactions with a young black couple who had just boarded. Brenda's attitude shifted dramatically. She seemed uninterested in their needs, rolling her eyes when they asked a question about their seating arrangement. Imani's resolve strengthened. She would not allow Brenda's prejudiced behavior to go unchecked. If she had to endure this for the greater good, then so be it. The flight might be a long one, but it could also serve as an opportunity for Imani to uncover the truth. Little did Imani know that her decision to document Brenda's behavior would lead to a pivotal moment that would change everything. The flight was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would force Brenda to confront her prejudices in a way she could never have anticipated. As the plane ascended into the sky, Imani's focus remained on Brenda. The flight crew had settled into a rhythm, but Brenda seemed more interested in her own authority than in ensuring a smooth flight experience for everyone. Imani continued to record, capturing snippets of Brenda's interactions with the passengers, her dismissive comments, and her blatant favoritism towards white travelers. "Excuse me, miss," a young black woman in the aisle seat called out to Brenda as she passed. "Could you please help me with my bag? It's a bit heavy." Brenda paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You'll have to wait your turn," she replied curtly, moving past the woman without offering assistance. Imani's heart sank. She felt a mix of anger and sadness for the young woman, who had simply asked for help. "Unbelievable," Imani muttered under her breath, her resolve hardening. She would confront Brenda later, but first, she needed to gather more evidence. With the plane cruising at altitude, Imani took a deep breath, trying to calm her rising frustration. She glanced at her fellow economy passengers, noting their expressions of discomfort and confusion. Were they aware of the discrimination happening right in front of them? Did they feel powerless to act? The flight continued, and the cabin buzzed with chatter. Imani's phone buzzed with notifications, a reminder of her busy life waiting for her back home. She was grateful for the distraction, but pushed it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The more she observed, the clearer it became that Brenda's behavior was part of a larger issue at Skybound Airways. As the flight attendants served drinks and snacks, Brenda's condescending tone resurfaced. "If you don't like the choices, you can take it up with management," she snapped at one passenger who expressed disappointment over the limited options. Imani felt her anger boil over. This was not just about her. It was about every passenger subjected to Brenda's arrogance. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from the cockpit, cutting through the chatter and causing the flight attendants to spring into action. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've encountered unexpected turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated." Imani's heart raced. She could see the concern etched on the faces of her fellow passengers as the plane shook. Brenda, however, seemed unfazed. She continued to saunter down the aisle, her indifference concerning. As the turbulence intensified, a middle-aged man in the front row suddenly clutched his chest, his face turning pale. "Help! I can't breathe," he gasped, panic rising in his voice. Imani's instincts kicked in. She unbuckled her seatbelt and rushed toward the man, her CEO training taking over. "Stay calm," she said, her voice steady. "Can you hear me? We need to get you help." Brenda stood frozen, her expression shifting from indifference to shock as she realized the gravity of the situation. Imani knelt beside the man, assessing his condition. "Does anyone have an inhaler?" She called out, scanning the cabin for anyone who might be able to assist. A woman in the rear of the plane raised her hand. I have one, she shouted, scrambling out of her seat to reach the front. Bring it here, Imani instructed, maintaining her focus on the man. She could feel the tension in the cabin rising, the passengers holding their breath, waiting for her to take charge. As the woman handed over the inhaler, Imani carefully guided the man through the steps, her voice calm and reassuring. You're going to be okay. Just take deep breaths. We'll get you through this. Brenda finally snapped out of her stupor, moving to assist Imani. What can I do? She asked, the panic evident in her voice. Imani shot her a look that was both incredulous and determined. Help me calm the other passengers. They need to see that everything is under control. Brenda nodded, her demeanor shifting as she stepped back to the front of the cabin, her role as the gate agent momentarily forgotten. Imani continued to focus on the man who was beginning to regain his color. Thank you, he whispered, tears of relief in his eyes. I thought I was going to die. You're safe now, Imani said, her heart swelling with pride at her ability to remain composed in the face of chaos. The turbulence began to subside, and the cabin crew resumed their normal duties as the plane stabilized. As the plane leveled out, Brenda returned to Imani's side, her expression transformed. I didn't know you could do that, she stammered, her earlier arrogance replaced by genuine awe. Imani took a deep breath, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. It's not about what I can do, Brenda. It's about how we treat each other in moments of crisis. You need to remember that every passenger deserves respect, regardless of their appearance. Brenda's face flushed, and for a moment Imani saw a flicker of shame in her eyes. I understand. I'll do better. Imani nodded, but she knew that words alone wouldn't suffice. Action was needed. The flight continued, and once they landed safely, Imani felt a sense of determination wash over her. She would confront Brenda about her behavior and ensure that the airline addressed the systemic issues that allowed such discrimination to persist. As the plane came to a stop at the terminal, Imani gathered her belongings, her phone still recording the entire episode. She had ample evidence to present to Skybound Airways management. This wasn't just a personal grievance. It was an opportunity to initiate real change within the airline. As the passengers disembarked, Imani approached Brenda, who was still processing the events of the flight. We need to talk, Imani said, her voice firm yet measured. And I need you to listen. Brenda nodded, her expression a mix of trepidation and understanding. I'm ready. Imani steeled herself for the conversation ahead, knowing that it had the potential to reshape not only her own future but the future of countless passengers who had faced similar injustices. As the plane doors slid open, Imani Jones stepped into the terminal, her mind racing with thoughts of the flight and the unsettling encounter with Brenda Clark. The bustling airport was a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere on the plane, and as Imani navigated the crowd, she felt a surge of determination. She was resolved to confront the airline's management about Brenda's behavior and the underlying issues that allowed such discrimination to fester. Imani spotted a Skybound Airways customer service desk nearby and made her way over. The bright blue uniforms and welcoming smiles of the staff contrasted sharply with Brenda's demeanor. Imani took a moment to gather her thoughts, mentally preparing for the conversation ahead. She needed to articulate her experience clearly to ensure that her message was not lost in translation. Good afternoon. How can I assist you today? A friendly staff member greeted her, their smile genuine and warm. Hi, I'm Imani Jones, she began, her tone firm yet composed. I need to speak with someone in management about an issue I encountered during my flight. Of course, please have a seat, and I'll get the manager right away, the staff member replied, gesturing toward a nearby seating area. Imani sat down, her heart racing as she waited. The terminal was alive with chatter and movement, but her focus was solely on the task at hand. She couldn't shake the feeling that what had happened on the plane was part of a much larger problem within the airline, a problem that needed to be addressed immediately. A few moments later, a tall woman in a tailored suit approached her, exuding an air of authority. Ms. Jones, I'm Claire Thompson, the station manager. I understand you wanted to discuss an issue regarding your flight? Yes, thank you for coming, Imani replied, her voice steady. I experienced a troubling situation with one of your gate agents, Brenda Clark. I was downgraded from first class to economy due to her discriminatory behavior. Claire's expression shifted to concern. I'm sorry to hear that. Can you please provide me with more details about what happened? Imani took a deep breath, recounting the events of the flight, the way Brenda had treated her, the dismissive comments, and the blatant favoritism. She explained how Brenda's behavior extended beyond her own experience, affecting other passengers as well, particularly those of color. I have video evidence of her interactions during the flight, Imani added, her resolve solidifying. This isn't just about me, it's about creating a safe and respectful environment for all passengers. Claire listened intently, her brow furrowed in concern. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, and I assure you that we take these matters seriously. Discrimination of any kind is unacceptable at Skybound Airways. Imani could see genuine concern in Claire's eyes, which gave her a glimmer of hope. I want to ensure that Brenda's behavior is addressed, and that your staff receives the necessary training to prevent this from happening again. It's not just about punishing an employee, it's about fostering an inclusive environment. Absolutely, Claire replied firmly. We have diversity and inclusion training, but clearly it needs to be reinforced. I will personally look into this matter and ensure that your concerns are addressed. Imani nodded, feeling a sense of validation. Thank you. I believe that change starts with accountability, and I hope to help facilitate that process. After their conversation, Claire took Imani's contact information, assuring her that she would follow up regarding the investigation into Brenda's behavior. Imani left the customer service area feeling a sense of relief, but she knew that the battle was far from over. Brenda might be just one individual, but Imani understood that systemic issues required systemic solutions. As she made her way to the airport exit, Imani's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from her assistant, Jordan. Hey, just checking in. How was your trip? Imani smiled at the message, grateful for Jordan's support. She quickly typed back, It was eventful. I'll fill you in later. Let's schedule a meeting to discuss some changes I want to implement for the company. Within minutes, Imani stepped outside, the cool breeze brushing against her skin. She inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh air. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the city. It was a beautiful evening, but Imani's mind was still racing with thoughts of the day's events. As she drove home, Imani contemplated the next steps. She wanted to leverage her experience to make a difference, not just for herself, but for every traveler who had faced similar discrimination. The more she thought about it, the more determined she became. That night, as she settled into her home office, Imani started drafting a proposal for a national campaign advocating for passenger rights. She envisioned an initiative that would raise awareness about discrimination in the travel industry, providing resources for those who face similar challenges. Imani wanted to empower passengers to speak out and hold airlines accountable for their staff's behavior. After hours of brainstorming, she finally crafted a draft titled Fly with Dignity. It outlined the need for airlines to create safe environments for all passengers, emphasizing the importance of diversity training, transparent reporting mechanisms, and accountability measures. Imani felt a sense of purpose as she worked, her passion fueling her creativity. Just as she finished her draft, her phone rang. It was Claire Thompson. "Hello, Ms. Jones," Claire said, her tone professional yet warm. "I wanted to follow up on our earlier conversation. We've begun the process of reviewing the incident involving Brenda Clark." "Thank you for calling, Claire. I appreciate your prompt attention to this matter," Imani replied, her voice steady. "After reviewing your video evidence and speaking with other passengers, it's clear that Brenda's behavior was inappropriate and inconsistent with our company values. We will be taking appropriate action," Claire said. Imani felt a wave of relief wash over her. "I'm glad to hear that. It's crucial for the airline to demonstrate a commitment to inclusivity and respect." "Absolutely. We also want to involve you in our diversity and inclusion training program. Your experience and insights could provide valuable perspective," Claire suggested. Imani's heart raced at the opportunity. "I would be honored to contribute. It's important that we create a culture where everyone feels valued." "Great. I'll have my team reach out to coordinate," Claire said before ending the call. Imani hung up, a sense of satisfaction swelling within her. She had taken the first steps toward creating meaningful change, and it felt empowering. But she also knew that there would be challenges ahead. Brenda's behavior was not an isolated incident, and addressing systemic issues within the airline would require ongoing effort and commitment. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Imani met with Claire and the training team at Skybound Airways, discussing the specific changes they could implement to foster a more inclusive environment. Imani shared her experiences, emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in customer service. As they finalized the training curriculum, Imani felt a sense of camaraderie with the team. They were all united in the goal of creating a better experience for passengers. Imani also began drafting a press release for her Fly with Dignity campaign, eager to share her vision with the public. But just as things were looking up, another challenge arose. Imani received an anonymous email containing screenshots of Brenda's social media posts that displayed her ongoing prejudices and derogatory comments about passengers of color. It was clear that Brenda had not changed. She was still engaging in toxic behavior. Imani's heart sank as she read the email. This was not just a personal affront. It was a reflection of the deeper issues within the airline. The evidence was damning, and it could jeopardize everything they had worked for. Imani knew she had to act quickly. She decided to schedule an emergency meeting with Claire and the airline's executive team to address the situation. There was no time to waste. The integrity of the entire initiative was at stake, and Imani was determined to see it through. Imani Jones paced the floor of her home office, her mind racing with thoughts of the anonymous email and the implications it held for her campaign and the airline's reputation. She couldn't let Brenda Clark's actions go unchecked, especially when they threatened to undermine the very changes they were trying to implement. With a deep breath, Imani composed herself and picked up the phone. She dialed Claire Thompson's number, her stomach swirling with a mix of anxiety and determination. The phone rang only once before Claire picked up. "Hello, Ms. Jones," Claire said, her tone warm yet professional. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Hi, Claire. I need to meet with you and the executive team immediately. I have urgent information regarding Brenda Clark," Imani replied, her voice steady. "Of course. Is everything okay?" Claire asked, concern evident in her voice. "I just received some disturbing evidence that suggests Brenda hasn't changed at all. In fact, she's continuing to express her prejudiced views online," Imani said, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "Let's meet as soon as possible," Claire said firmly. "I'll arrange for us to gather in the conference room within the hour. Thank you for bringing this to my attention." Imani hung up, her heart pounding. She felt a mix of urgency and resolve. The time for action was now, and she was determined to confront the issue head-on. Within minutes, she was dressed and ready to head to the Skybound Airways headquarters. When Imani arrived at the corporate office, she was greeted by the bustling atmosphere of the busy workplace. Employees moved purposefully, their faces focused on their tasks. Imani felt a surge of determination as she walked through the halls, her mind set on the mission ahead. In the conference room, Claire was already waiting, along with a few other members of the executive team. Imani took a seat at the head of the table, her presence commanding respect. The atmosphere was tense as she prepared to present the evidence she had received. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Imani began, her voice clear and authoritative. "As you know, we've been working tirelessly to implement a diversity and inclusion initiative following my experience on the flight. However, I've just received alarming information regarding Brenda Clark that could jeopardize everything we've been building." Imani pulled out her laptop and opened the email, displaying the screenshots of Brenda's social media posts for everyone to see. Gasps filled the room as the executives read through the derogatory comments and prejudiced remarks. "This is unacceptable," Imani continued, her voice firm. "Brenda's behavior not only reflects poorly on Skybound Airways, but also undermines the very values we are trying to uphold. We cannot allow her actions to tarnish our commitment to inclusivity." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "We need to take immediate action. This behavior is not only damaging to the company's reputation, but also to the passengers who trust us." One of the other executives, a man in his 40s named David, leaned forward. "What do you propose we do? This is a serious allegation, and we need to handle it delicately." Imani's resolve strengthened. "We need to terminate Brenda's employment immediately. She is a liability, and we cannot afford to have employees who promote discrimination, especially in a public-facing role. Additionally, we must communicate transparently with our passengers about this incident and reassure them of our commitment to change." The room fell silent as the executives processed Imani's words. Claire exchanged glances with the team before speaking. I agree. We must act swiftly and decisively. It's crucial that we show our accountability. Imani felt a rush of relief as she watched the executives nod in agreement. They were united in their commitment to change, and it felt empowering to have their support. Let's draft a statement for the press, Claire suggested. We need to be proactive in addressing this issue before it escalates. Imani nodded, feeling a surge of optimism. I can help with that. We should also include a commitment to our diversity and inclusion training program, emphasizing that we're taking steps to ensure this doesn't happen again. The conversation flowed as they discussed the necessary steps to address the situation. They crafted a press release that outlined their commitment to diversity, the termination of Brenda Clark, and the implementation of enhanced training for all staff members. Imani felt a sense of purpose as they worked together, knowing they were taking meaningful action. As the meeting concluded, Claire turned to Imani. Thank you for your leadership in this situation. Your willingness to speak up is commendable, and I believe it will lead to real change within our organization. Imani smiled, feeling a swell of pride. It's not just about me, it's about all the passengers who deserve to be treated with respect. We're creating a culture that values every individual. The team quickly moved to finalize the press release, ensuring that it would be distributed to the media before the end of the day. Imani felt a sense of urgency as they worked, knowing that the sooner they acted, the better. After the release was sent out, Imani stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the city. She felt a mixture of relief and anticipation, knowing that they had taken a significant step towards addressing the deeper issues within the airline. As she stood outside, her phone buzzed with notifications. She opened her messages and saw that Jordan had sent her a text. Hey, just saw the press release. I'm proud of you. Let's celebrate later? Imani smiled at the support from her assistant. She quickly typed back, Thank you, I'd love to. Let's discuss the campaign details when we meet. As she returned to the office, Imani felt a renewed sense of determination. The battle against discrimination was far from over, but she had taken a significant step in the right direction. She was committed to ensuring that Skybound Airways would be a leader in the fight for inclusivity in the travel industry. However, just as she settled back into her office, another email notification popped up. It was from an anonymous sender, this time with a subject line that sent chills down her spine. Brenda's not the only one. Imani's heart raced as she opened the email, her eyes scanning the text. The email contained more screenshots, this time showcasing a string of messages from several employees discussing their discriminatory attitudes and experiences with passengers of color. The depth of the problem was far worse than Imani had anticipated. She realized that Brenda's behavior was not an isolated incident. It was part of a toxic culture that permeated the airline's operations. Imani felt a surge of determination coursing through her. If she was going to make a real difference, she would need to address not only Brenda's actions, but the systemic issues that allowed such attitudes to flourish. Imani took a deep breath, her mind racing with new strategies as she prepared for the next steps. The fight was just beginning, and she was ready to lead the charge toward real change. Imani Jones sat at her desk, staring at the email that had just arrived. The message from the anonymous sender weighed heavily on her mind, revealing a disturbing reality about Skybound Airways. Brenda Clark's behavior wasn't merely a singular instance of prejudice. It was symptomatic of a larger issue within the airline. This revelation ignited a fierce determination within Imani. She knew she had to act decisively to bring about meaningful change. The following morning, Imani scheduled a meeting with Claire Thompson and the executive team to address the newly uncovered issues. She wanted to approach this with both urgency and sensitivity, understanding that the path ahead would require not just a firm hand, but also a commitment to listening and learning. As Imani prepared for the meeting, she reviewed the screenshots in the email again. They depicted conversations among employees filled with derogatory remarks and dismissive attitudes towards passengers of color. This was no longer just about Brenda. It was about the culture of the entire organization. Imani felt a mixture of anger and disappointment as she realized how deep the roots of prejudice ran within the very company she was committed to helping. The conference room was filled with tension as the executive team gathered. Imani took a deep breath, centering herself as she entered. Claire greeted her with a nod, and the rest of the team followed suit, their expressions a mix of concern and anticipation. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Imani began, her voice steady and authoritative. "I wanted to address some alarming information I received regarding systemic discrimination within our airline." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. "I've received anonymous emails containing evidence of ongoing prejudiced behavior from multiple employees, not just Brenda Clark. This is a serious problem that we cannot ignore." Claire shifted in her seat, her brow furrowing. "What kind of evidence are we talking about?" Imani pulled out her laptop and projected the screenshots onto the screen for everyone to see. The gasps and murmurs that followed were palpable as the executives read through the derogatory comments and dismissive attitudes. "This is unacceptable," Imani continued, her voice firm. "These attitudes not only endanger our reputation but also affect the passengers who place their trust in us. It's clear that we need to take immediate and comprehensive action." David, one of the board members, leaned forward. "What actions do you propose?" Imani had anticipated this question. "We need to implement a thorough review of our hiring practices, training programs, and overall company culture. Our diversity and inclusion training isn't enough if we don't hold our employees accountable for their behavior. This needs to be a top-down initiative." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "I agree. We can't just focus on one employee and let the rest slide. We need a complete overhaul of our approach." Imani felt a surge of hope. "I suggest we form a task force dedicated to addressing these issues. This team would consist of individuals from various departments and backgrounds, ensuring that we have a diverse perspective as we implement change." As the discussion continued, Imani could see the team rallying around her proposal. They discussed the importance of creating a safe space for employees to voice their concerns and experiences without fear of retaliation. They brainstormed ways to enhance their diversity training, incorporating real-life scenarios and practical solutions. After an hour of productive dialogue, Imani felt a sense of accomplishment. They had laid the groundwork for a significant cultural shift within Skybound Airways, but she knew it was just the beginning. The real work lay ahead, and she was ready for the challenge. As the meeting adjourned, Claire approached Imani, a look of admiration in her eyes. "Thank you for your leadership. Your courage to speak up is inspiring, and it's exactly what we need right now." Imani smiled, grateful for Claire's support. "We're in this together. It's time for Skybound to truly reflect the values we claim to uphold." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Imani worked closely with the newly formed task force, meeting regularly to refine their approach and implement tangible changes. They revamped the diversity and inclusion training, incorporating scenarios derived from the evidence Imani had collected, and established clear protocols for reporting discrimination. Imani also made it a point to engage directly with staff members at all levels. She held open forums where employees could share their experiences and concerns. She listened intently, taking notes and responding with empathy, determined to create an environment where everyone felt valued. However, the push for change did not come without resistance. Some employees were reluctant to embrace the new initiatives, questioning the need for such drastic measures. Imani faced backlash from those who felt threatened by the prospect of accountability. She understood that changing a deeply ingrained culture would take time, but she was steadfast in her commitment. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging forum, Imani returned to her office feeling drained. The weight of the world seemed to rest on her shoulders as she contemplated the uphill battle ahead. Just then, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was another email, this time from Brenda. "Imani, I know I messed up, but I want to talk. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I'm ready to listen," the email read. Imani's first instinct was to dismiss it. She had no interest in hearing Brenda's excuses. Yet a part of her hesitated. If Brenda was genuinely willing to reflect on her actions, perhaps this could be an opportunity for growth, for both of them. After a moment of contemplation, Imani decided to respond. "I'll meet with you, but I expect honesty and accountability. This isn't just about you, it's about the culture you represent at Skybound." They agreed to meet at a nearby cafe, and as the day approached, Imani felt a swirl of emotions. She wanted to approach the conversation with an open mind, but she also couldn't ignore the hurt Brenda's actions had caused not only her, but others as well. On the day of the meeting, Imani arrived early, her heart racing as she waited for Brenda to show. She ordered a coffee, her mind running through the potential scenarios of their conversation. She wanted to hear Brenda's perspective, but also needed to hold her accountable. When Brenda arrived, Imani was taken aback by her appearance. Gone was the confident demeanor she had exhibited at the gate. Instead, Brenda looked vulnerable, her shoulders hunched and her eyes downcast. "Thank you for meeting me," Brenda said softly as she took a seat across from Imani. Imani nodded, studying Brenda's expression. "Let's get straight to it. You've said you want to listen. What does that mean for you?" Brenda took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since that day. I realize now how my actions affected you and so many others. I was wrong, and I've been reflecting on my prejudices. I want to change, but I don't know where to start." Imani felt a flicker of hope, but she remained cautious. "Acknowledgement is the first step, but it's not enough. You need to understand the impact of your words and actions, not just on me, but on every passenger you encounter." "I know," Brenda replied, her voice breaking. "I didn't see it before. I was so caught up in my own biases that I didn't even realize how I was treating people. I'm ashamed." Imani leaned back, contemplating Brenda's sincerity. "Being ashamed isn't enough, Brenda. You need to actively work on changing your perspective and behavior. It's not just about you. It's about the culture of the airline." "I understand," Brenda said, her eyes filled with tears. "I want to participate in the training, to really learn and grow. I want to be better." Imani studied Brenda's face, searching for any sign of insincerity. "If you truly want to change, you need to be willing to confront your own biases and be honest with yourself. This isn't a quick fix, it's a journey." Brenda nodded, her expression earnest. "I'm ready for that journey. I want to help create a better environment for everyone." Imani felt a mixture of skepticism and hope. "Then I suggest you start by participating in the open forums and training sessions we're implementing. It's time for you to listen to the experiences of others and understand the impact of your actions." The conversation continued, and Imani found herself cautiously optimistic. Brenda's willingness to engage in the process was a step in the right direction. However, she knew that the real test would come in the weeks ahead. Would Brenda follow through on her commitment? As the meeting concluded, Imani felt a sense of relief. They had established a foundation for dialogue, but she also knew that words were only the beginning. The real work lay in transforming those words into action. In the days that followed, Imani poured her energy into the initiatives they had developed. The task force met regularly to refine their approach, and Imani took the lead in coordinating the upcoming training sessions. She was determined to ensure that everyone in the organization understood the importance of inclusivity and respect. However, the challenges were not over. As Imani worked tirelessly to implement change, she began to receive pushback from employees who resisted the new initiatives. Some felt that the focus on diversity was unnecessary, while others resented the idea of being held accountable for their actions. Despite the resistance, Imani remained steadfast. She held firm in her belief that change was possible and necessary. She organized additional open forums to address employee concerns and foster dialogue, encouraging everyone to voice their opinions. Imani Jones stood at the front of the conference room, her heart pounding as she faced a sea of skeptical faces. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with resistance. She had organized this forum to address the concerns of employees who felt overwhelmed by the recent push for diversity and inclusion within Skybound Airways. Imani understood the apprehensions. Change was never easy, but she also knew that complacency would only perpetuate the toxic culture that had been allowed to thrive for far too long. "Thank you all for being here," Imani began, her voice steady despite the palpable tension. "I know that many of you have concerns about our new initiatives, and I want to create a space where we can discuss those openly. Change can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary for our growth as a company and as individuals." A hand shot up from the back of the room. It belonged to a middle-aged man named Mark, a longtime employee who had been vocal in his opposition to the new policies. "Why should we have to change? We've been doing things a certain way for years, and now suddenly we're being told that everything we know is wrong. It feels like we're being punished for something we didn't even do." Imani took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I understand that it feels overwhelming, Mark. But this isn't about punishing anyone. It's about creating a safe and respectful environment for all our passengers. We've seen firsthand how prejudice can affect our service and reputation. This is our opportunity to make a positive change." Mark crossed his arms, still unconvinced. "But who decides what's considered prejudice? It seems like we're being forced to conform to someone else's ideals instead of doing what we think is right." Imani felt a flicker of frustration but maintained her composure. This isn't about conforming to someone else's ideals. It's about recognizing the impact our actions and words have on others. Every passenger deserves respect, and if we're not providing that, we're failing in our duty. The room was silent, the weight of Imani's words hanging in the air. She could see some of the employees shifting in their seats, their expressions softening slightly. Imani knew she had to keep the momentum going. "Let's talk about the training sessions we've planned," she continued. "These sessions will not only address the behaviors we need to change, but also provide tools for understanding and empathy. We want to empower you to engage with passengers in a way that fosters trust and respect. This isn't just about compliance, it's about becoming better at what we do." As Imani spoke, she could sense the skepticism beginning to wane. Employees were leaning in, listening, and some even nodding in agreement. But she knew she had to address the underlying fears as well. "I understand that many of you might feel that this is an attack on your character," she said, her tone softer but still firm. "But I want to assure you that this is a process of growth, not blame. We all have biases, and acknowledging them is the first step toward change. This is about learning how to recognize those biases and adjust our behavior accordingly." Another employee raised her hand. "What if we don't agree with everything in the training? Will we be penalized for expressing our opinions?" Imani smiled, appreciating the honesty in the question. "No, absolutely not. Open dialogue is encouraged. I want this to be a space where we can discuss our differences and learn from each other. Disagreement is part of growth, but it's how we handle that disagreement that will define us as a company." The atmosphere in the room began to shift. Imani could see the employees starting to engage with one another, discussing their thoughts and concerns. Some were still hesitant, but others seemed ready to embrace the change. "Let's take a moment to hear from those of you who are supportive of these initiatives," Imani suggested. She wanted to create a balance, allowing the more optimistic voices to shine through. A young woman named Sarah, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "I think these changes are really important. I've seen how passengers react when they feel respected and valued. I want to be part of a company that stands for inclusivity." Encouraged by Sarah's bravery, a few others chimed in, expressing their support for the new policies and sharing their own experiences of encountering discrimination in the airline industry. Imani felt a warm glow of hope as she listened to their stories, realizing that this was the change she had envisioned. After the forum, Imani felt a sense of accomplishment. They had made progress, but she knew it was only the beginning. She was determined to keep the momentum going, to ensure that the dialogue continued and that the changes they were implementing would take root. In the days that followed, Imani and the task force worked tirelessly to finalize the training curriculum. They incorporated the feedback from the forum, ensuring that the sessions would be interactive and engaging. Imani wanted employees to leave the training feeling empowered, not simply lectured. As the first training session approached, Imani felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. She knew that this was a pivotal moment for Skybound Airways, and she wanted it to be a success. She had invited Brenda to participate, believing that her presence could serve as a powerful example of accountability and redemption. On the day of the training, Imani arrived early to set up the room. She arranged chairs in a circle, creating a welcoming environment that encouraged discussion. As employees filed in, she greeted them with a warm smile, hoping to ease any remaining tension. "Welcome, everyone," Imani said, her voice bright and enthusiastic. "I'm so glad to see all of you here today. We're going to have an open and honest conversation about diversity, inclusion, and the importance of creating a respectful environment for all our passengers." As the training began, Imani introduced the facilitators, who were experienced in leading discussions on bias and inclusion. They presented real-life scenarios, encouraging employees to share their thoughts on how they would handle each situation. The discussions were lively, with employees engaging and challenging one another's perspectives. Imani watched as Brenda participated, her demeanor humbled but eager. She listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. Imani felt a flicker of hope that perhaps Brenda was genuinely committed to changing her ways. During one segment, the facilitators encouraged employees to reflect on their own biases and share personal experiences. Imani decided to share her own story, the experience of being downgraded on the flight, and how it had sparked this entire initiative. "I want you to understand that this isn't just about policies and training," Imani said, her voice steady. "It's about the real impact our actions have on people's lives. I've faced discrimination and it's painful, but it's also an opportunity for growth, for all of us." The room fell silent as Imani's words resonated with her colleagues. She could see their expressions shifting as they began to connect the dots between their own experiences and the broader issues of inclusion and respect. After the training session, Imani felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had made significant strides, but Imani knew that the work was far from over. The real test would come in the weeks and months ahead as they continued to implement these changes and hold each other accountable. As Imani left the training room, Claire approached her, a look of admiration in her eyes. "You did an incredible job today, Imani. Your vulnerability and sharing your story really resonated with everyone. I believe we're on the right path." "Thank you, Claire. I just hope that we can sustain this momentum," Imani replied, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "It's one thing to have a good training session, but it's another to ensure that the culture truly changes." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "I understand, and I'm committed to making it happen. We'll continue to support you and the task force in every way we can." As Imani left the office that day, she felt a sense of determination. She was committed to making Skybound Airways a leader in diversity and inclusion, not just in theory, but in practice. And although the journey ahead would be challenging, she knew that together, they could create a culture where everyone felt valued and respected. In the weeks that followed the training sessions, Imani Jones noticed a palpable shift in the atmosphere at Skybound Airways. Employees began engaging in open dialogues about diversity and inclusion, sharing their experiences, and working together to foster a culture of respect. The commitment to change was evident, not just in the training sessions, but in the interactions among staff and with passengers. Brenda Clark, who had once been a symbol of prejudice within the airline, had embraced her role in the transformation. She actively participated in the training sessions, sharing her journey of self-reflection and growth. Imani watched as Brenda interacted with her colleagues, her demeanor more open and receptive. It was clear that she was genuinely invested in making amends, and the change in her attitude had a ripple effect throughout the organization. One afternoon, Imani received an email from Claire, requesting a meeting with the executive team to discuss the progress they had made. As she entered the conference room, she felt a mix of anticipation and pride. The team had worked tirelessly to implement the changes they had discussed, and now it was time to assess their impact. "Thank you all for gathering today," Claire began, her tone enthusiastic. "I'm excited to share that our recent initiatives have received positive feedback from both employees and passengers. We've seen a notable decrease in complaints regarding discriminatory behavior, and many passengers have expressed their appreciation for our commitment to inclusivity." Imani felt a surge of pride at the news. "That's incredible to hear, Claire. It's a testament to the hard work everyone has put in. But we must continue to hold ourselves accountable and build on this momentum." David chimed in, "I think we should consider implementing a regular feedback loop, allowing employees to voice their thoughts and experiences continuously. This way, we can identify areas for improvement and ensure we're staying true to our mission." Imani nodded, appreciating the proactive approach. "Absolutely. Creating a safe space for ongoing dialogue is crucial to our success." As the meeting continued, the atmosphere shifted from one of skepticism to one of collaboration and enthusiasm. The executives brainstormed new initiatives to further enhance the company culture, including outreach programs aimed at engaging communities of color and establishing partnerships with organizations that aligned with their values. As they wrapped up, Imani felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had not only addressed the immediate concerns surrounding discrimination, but had also created a framework for ongoing growth and understanding. It was a significant step toward establishing Skybound Airways as a leader in diversity and inclusion within the airline industry. Later that week, Imani received a heartfelt message from a passenger who had experienced discrimination on a previous flight. The passenger thanked her for taking action and for the changes that had already begun to take effect. Imani's heart swelled with gratitude. This was why she had fought so hard, because every person deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. As Imani reflected on the journey they had undertaken, She felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight against discrimination was ongoing, but she was confident that the foundation they had built would lead to lasting change. Together, they had created a culture of accountability, respect, and understanding, a culture that would continue to grow and evolve. With a smile on her face, Imani looked forward to the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew that change was possible and that Skybound Airways had taken the first crucial steps toward a brighter, more inclusive future. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.